Have you ever spent hours with a feeder rod without getting a single bite, while another angler just a few yards away keeps landing fish after fish? You're fishing the same water with similar tackle, yet the results are completely different. The surprising part is that it's usually not about luck. Over the years, I've realized that most slow fishing days are caused by our own mistakes, many of them so common that we don't even notice them anymore. In this video, I'll break down the 10 biggest feeder fishing mistakes that can ruin your day on the water. And stay until the end, because I'll reveal the one mistake that causes many anglers to miss most of their bites without ever realizing it. If you enjoy fishing, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and leave a comment telling me which state you're from and how many years you've been feeder fishing. Let's start with the first, and probably the most common, mistake. Many anglers arrive at the lake, set up their gear, and immediately cast to the spot that looks the most convenient. But beneath the surface there could be deep silt, thick weeds, or sharp mussel beds where your bait disappears and your leaders get snagged over and over again. That's why I always spend a few minutes studying the bottom before making my first cast. A simple marker weight is all you need. Slowly drag it across the bottom, and you can actually feel what's down there. If it moves smoothly without sudden resistance, you've probably found a clean, firm area, and those spots are often the most productive. If the marker weight starts vibrating, catching, or jerking, you're likely dragging it across rocks, mussel beds, submerged timber, or other snag-filled structure. And if it feels heavy at first but suddenly becomes lighter, you've probably found a drop-off. These changes in depth are natural feeding routes where fish often gather. Here's another simple trick. Count the seconds from the moment your rig hits the water until the weight reaches the bottom. That makes it easy to identify deeper and shallower areas. In my experience, fish rarely hold over a flat, featureless bottom. They're much more likely to stay along ledges, drop-offs, and the transition between hard and soft bottom where food naturally collects. On rivers, the current often helps you locate productive water. On large reservoirs and natural lakes, however, skipping bottom mapping can leave you casting almost at random for hours. Yes, it may take a couple dozen practice casts to understand what's below the surface, but those few extra minutes can easily turn into a much better catch once you start fishing the right spot. One more thing that many anglers forget, even if a spot produced great yesterday, it can be completely different today. Overnight, current can carry in weeds, branches, or debris, turning yesterday's hotspot into a dead zone. That's why I always check the bottom again before every trip. Now let's move on to the second mistake. Let's say you've already found the perfect spot. If you don't lock in your casting distance and pick a clear landmark on the opposite bank, all that work can be wasted. Cast a few feet short or long, and your bait ends up scattered instead of concentrated. Fish are far more likely to feed on one tight baited area than on food spread all over the bottom. Even a small mistake in distance can completely change the outcome of your day. The fix is simple. First, always clip your line to the reel spool so every cast lands at the same distance. Second, choose a clear target across the water. Not just a group of trees, but something easy to identify, like a single tree, a utility pole, or the corner of a building. That way, even as the light fades, you'll keep hitting the exact same spot. Another habit that's worth developing is remembering your distance after the first accurate cast. You can count reel turns or use distance sticks. It may seem unnecessary, but one day it can save your entire fishing session. I learned this the hard way. I once found a perfect area with a firm bottom and a mussel bed, and the bites came one after another. Then a fish broke me off. Normally that's no big deal, but I hadn't remembered the distance or picked a casting reference. I spent nearly half an hour casting blindly while the fish kept feeding exactly where I could no longer reach them. Since then, I never make the same mistake. The moment I find a productive spot, I immediately lock in the distance and choose a landmark. Sooner or later everyone loses a rig, but if you know your exact distance, it only takes a couple of casts to get right back on the fish instead of starting from scratch. The third mistake is using the wrong ground bait mix. Honestly, this is where many anglers lose most of their bites. The bait itself may be excellent, but it has to match the conditions. That's something people often overlook. If you're fishing in current or targeting larger fish, a light, fluffy mix can actually work against you. It quickly attracts small fish, while the current washes the feed downstream, away from your hook bait. A simple rule has never let me down: the stronger the current and the bigger the fish you're targeting, the heavier and more compact your ground bait mix should be. Choosing the right feeder is just as important as choosing the right bait mix. In still water, open feeders work great because they release the bait quickly. On rivers, however, I almost always use closed-end feeders. They wash out the ground bait more gradually, keeping fish feeding exactly where your hook bait is. There's another detail many anglers remember too late: if your ground bait is mixed too wet, it can stay packed inside the feeder instead of releasing properly. That's why I always prepare my mix ahead of time, let it rest, and keep some dry mix aside. If I need to adjust the consistency later, it's quick and easy. Seasonal changes matter too. During summer, sweet and rich flavors often work best. In cold water, though, strong scents can actually scare cautious fish away. The goal is simple: your ground bait should stay on your spot, break down gradually, and keep attracting fish instead of forming a solid lump or washing downstream. The fourth mistake is not feeding enough. This is where many anglers lose quality fish without realizing it. You've probably seen it before: the angler next to you keeps catching fish while your rod stays quiet. Often the difference isn't the tackle, it's the amount of bait on the bottom. Fish like common bream travel in schools and feed aggressively. If you only introduce a few feeder loads, they'll clean up the food quickly and move on looking for a better feeding area. Expecting a handful of casts to last an entire session is rarely enough. I still remember something an experienced angler once told me: you can't keep a school of bream with just a handful of bait. Give them a proper table, and they won't want to leave. There's a lot of truth in that. But feeding heavily doesn't mean overfeeding the fish. Most of your bait should consist of inexpensive, larger particles like cooked millet, pearl barley, sweet corn, or peas. These ingredients keep the fish interested without filling them up completely. Your hook bait should always be the most attractive bite on the menu. That way, the fish will spend more time searching through the feed and eventually find your hook. After your initial feed, don't forget to top up the spot regularly so the fish don't drift away. If the bites are coming consistently, recast more often to keep fresh bait on the bottom and maintain a tight feeding area. But when the action slows down, don't rush. Sometimes it's better to give the fish time to move onto the spot instead of constantly recasting every couple of minutes and disturbing the area. Another common mistake is constantly changing your casting spot. One cast goes here, the next a few feet to the left, then another one even farther away. Before long, your ground bait is scattered across the bottom instead of concentrated in one feeding area. Fish are much easier to hold on a single, compact baited spot. Once you've found the right location, stick with it and avoid unnecessary experimenting. By the way, I'd love to hear your opinion. Leave a comment below and tell me what you use most during the summer: commercial ground bait or your own homemade mix. It's always interesting to see which recipes work best for other anglers. The fifth mistake is choosing the wrong feeder. In current, a feeder that's too light will simply roll downstream, meaning you're no longer fishing where your bait is. On the other hand, a feeder that's too heavy isn't always the answer either. In shallow water, it can hit the bottom with a loud splash and easily spook cautious fish. Always match the feeder to the conditions. In strong current, it needs enough weight to stay firmly on the bottom. For long casts and windy days, bullet-style feeders are hard to beat. They fly straighter, cut through the wind more efficiently, and land much more accurately. Small details like these often make the difference between a slow day and a great catch. There's another factor many anglers underestimate: a strong crosswind. You might think you've cast perfectly to the clip, but the wind pushes the feeder off course before it even lands. As a result, your bait ends up nowhere near your target, and you can't figure out why the bite suddenly stopped. In those conditions, I prefer using a compact, aerodynamic feeder because it stays on line much better. And remember, there's no such thing as one feeder for every situation. At the start of the session, a heavier feeder is great for building your baited area quickly. Once the fish arrive, switching to a lighter feeder helps because it enters the water more quietly and is less likely to scare fish. My rule is simple: use the lightest feeder that still holds the bottom reliably. The sixth mistake is choosing the wrong leader. Most anglers get two things wrong: its length and its diameter. In still water, cautious fish usually respond much better to a long, thin leader because the hook bait moves more naturally, resulting in more bites. But on rivers, a leader that's too light may not survive the first good fish. In current, it's often much smarter to step up to a stronger line that can handle the extra pressure without sacrificing too many bites. If you're fishing over mussel beds or other abrasive bottoms, I almost always recommend using a fluorocarbon leader because it stands up much better to cuts and abrasion. And here's another important tip: with feeder fishing, you don't need a hard hook set. Most fish hook themselves against the weight of the feeder. Simply lift the rod smoothly and begin fighting the fish. A violent strike often ends with a snapped leader and a lost catch. That's also why I prepare all my leaders at home instead of tying them on the bank. I carry several lengths and line sizes, so changing one takes only a few seconds. And don't try to save money on leader material. A quality leader costs very little, but it's often the reason you land those cautious fish that barely bite. The seventh mistake is showing up with only one type of hook bait. Many anglers assume that if fish were biting on maggots yesterday, they'll want the same thing today. In reality, fish can change their preference overnight. One day they'll hammer nightcrawlers, the next they'll ignore everything except sweet corn, and another day they'll only respond to barley. That's why I always bring several different hook baits. Having options lets you quickly figure out what fish actually want today. When the bite is slow, bait combinations, often called cocktails, can be incredibly effective. Mixing two different baits on the same hook frequently outperforms using either one by itself. Season also plays a huge role. In cold water, bloodworms can be outstanding, but during the heat of summer they're difficult to keep fresh and spoil very quickly. That's why I rely more on maggots and plant-based baits during the warmer months. The same goes for your ground bait. In hot weather, cooked grains and homemade mixes can sour surprisingly fast, and fish usually avoid spoiled feed. It's much better to prepare a fresh batch than spend the entire day waiting for bites over bad bait. I also keep cooked grains separate, store them in the shade or in a cooler, and add small amounts as needed throughout the day. That keeps everything fresh and gives me the flexibility to adjust the mix if the fish become picky. Here's one final trick that makes a real difference. Your hook bait should always be the most attractive thing on the bottom. If it stands out from the rest of the feed, fish searching through the baited area are much more likely to pick it up. And don't think maggots are only useful on the hook. Chopping a handful into your ground bait adds natural movement and scent that can draw fish directly onto your feeding spot and keep them searching where your hook is waiting. The eighth mistake is poor casting technique. Many beginners cast a feeder rod the same way they cast a spinning rod, with a wide sidearm swing. That creates two major problems. First, it's almost impossible to hit the exact same spot cast after cast. Second, it's unsafe. If the line wraps around a guide during the cast, a heavy feeder can shoot off in a completely unexpected direction. That's why I always cast over my shoulder with a smooth, controlled motion aimed at a fixed landmark. Before every cast, I also take a second to check that the line isn't tangled around the guides. It's much better to catch a problem early than lose a feeder or snap the rod tip. One more trick I use is lightly feathering the line just before the feeder lands. It enters the water much more quietly, helps protect the line clip, and is less likely to spook nearby fish. If you're making long power casts, don't overlook a shock leader. That short section of heavier line absorbs the stress of the cast and greatly reduces the risk of breaking off your feeder. The ninth mistake is scaring the fish without even realizing it. Most anglers underestimate how sensitive fish can be, especially in shallow water where every unnecessary sound matters. I used to think shoreline noise wasn't a big deal until another angler pointed something out to me. I was fishing shallow water with a heavy feeder that hit the surface with a loud splash, yet I couldn't buy a bite. As soon as I switched to a lighter feeder and started casting more quietly, I got my first bite within minutes. That simple lesson completely changed the way I fish. Since then, I've followed one rule: the shallower the water, the quieter I try to be. Don't stomp along the bank, bang your tackle around, slam the lid of your tackle box, or shine a flashlight directly onto the water at night. Fish detect those disturbances surprisingly well, and if they sense danger, they'll simply leave the area. Sometimes staying quiet is the missing piece that turns a slow session into a successful one. One last thing that's just as important is understanding fish behavior. Common bream rarely stay in one place all day. During daylight hours, they usually hold in deeper water away from noise and disturbance. As evening approaches and into the night, they move on to drop-offs, ledges, and shallow feeding areas in search of food. Once you understand those daily movements, it's much easier to put yourself in the right place at the right time, and that's often the difference between hoping for bites and consistently catching fish. The 10th mistake is setting your quiver tip incorrectly. In my opinion, this is the reason many anglers miss more bites than anything else. If your line is too slack, delicate bites never reach the rod tip. The fish quietly takes the bait, and you reel in an empty hook wondering why nothing is biting. Your quiver tip should have just enough tension to stay responsive, but not so much that it pulls against the fish. Too much slack hides the bites, while too much tension makes cautious fish feel resistance and spit the bait out. Finding that perfect balance takes a little practice, but it makes a huge difference. While you're fishing, stay focused on the rod tip because not every bite looks the same. Sometimes it slowly pulls forward, and other times it suddenly springs back as the fish swims toward you. Any unusual movement is worth picking up the rod and making a smooth, controlled lift instead of a hard hook set. Those are the 10 biggest feeder fishing mistakes that quietly cost anglers fish every day. After many years on the water, I've come to one simple conclusion: most of the time, the problem isn't the fish. They're usually there. The real challenge is avoiding the small mistakes that keep us from catching them. In fact, I've learned that success rarely depends on the lake itself. More often, it's the little details that make all the difference. Correct just 2 or 3 of these mistakes, and your next fishing trip can turn out completely differently. So the next time your feeder rod stays quiet, don't be too quick to say there aren't any fish around. Instead, go through these 10 mistakes and honestly ask yourself if you're making one of them. More often than not, that's where the answer is. Now I'd love to hear from you. Which mistake do you think is the most important? Or maybe you have a favorite feeder fishing tip that I didn't mention today. Share it in the comments. Some of the best advice always comes from fellow anglers. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. There are plenty more real-world fishing tips, practical experiments, and proven techniques coming your way to help you catch more fish with confidence. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I wish you tight lines, unforgettable days on the water, and a landing net full of fish. See you in the next video.